In this presentation, we will set up a new employee and discuss payroll options within QuickBooks Pro 2020, QuickBooks Desktop 2020. Here we are in the Get Great Guitars company file. We're going to be thinking about the payroll now and setting up the employees. We set up the vendors, we set up the customers. Now we're going to go through the setting up of employees. Now, as we do this, note that we don't have the paid version of payroll. As you remember, when we set up the QuickBooks file, they asked us multiple times if we wanted to have a paid payroll version. Let's consider the paid payroll versions. QuickBooks then has, or should have, a manual version to enter the QuickBooks desktop information. Typically has manual version in prior years. There is a problem with setting up the manual version at this time. If QuickBooks then updates that, we will be using the manual version. Otherwise, we're going to be entering the payroll information just by journal entry. We will have and demonstrate the paid payroll in a later section of this course where we will focus more on payroll exclusively. And if you would like a full course basically on payroll within QuickBooks, which is a specialty in and of itself, then we do have a course that specializes in payroll itself. So the options within payroll, you'll recall, is that you could turn on the payroll within QuickBooks. If you were to do that, it would be an add-on feature. You would need to add something to it. I don't recommend using the manual payroll, even if we could get it up and running within QuickBooks for actual payroll processing, because it does get complex and you have to calculate the payroll taxes. The software is really good at calculating the payroll taxes, and it's nice to have that support. However, if you're practicing payroll, the input screens are much the same, and the manual version of the payroll process is really great to work with. So if we do get that updated shortly, we'll go through that and we'll enter the data input within the manual process within this problem. We'll also add some more payroll information later if you have the paid payroll, or if you'd like to understand it, then we'll run that process. And if you wanted to work along with it, you of course would have to pay for the payroll to look at it. Or you can just get an understanding of it. And if you get the manual payroll working with it, you can follow along with that as well. So here's the basic payroll within QuickBooks, the support that you would want to have. And there's 3 tiers to it. You can then choose the tier you want. Obviously, the higher tier, the more support you would have with the payroll, and the more costly it would then be. The other option you have with payroll is to get someone that's outside of QuickBooks entirely to help you out with the payroll. That would be like a third-party payroll. You would then have to enter that data into the system. However, you might not have to enter all the detail that would be done within that third-party system, or they may help you to basically enter that data into the QuickBooks system. So that's another option you can have. The largest payroll companies and human resources companies is ADP. So that's a first place you can kind of start to look at if you're looking for people that specialize in payroll and you want to go that route to just outsource the payroll. Or Paychex is the second largest, I believe, of the payroll. There are many more. These are just 2. I'm not promoting them or in any way. They don't pay me or anything like that. These are just 2 outservice payrolls. And then note that we're going to basically just simply be entering the data into the QuickBooks file. So what I'm going to do is close this out. And you'll notice down here in the employee section, we don't have any arrows or any keys that are going to actually allow us to enter the data. All we have is the timesheet and the turn on payroll button. If you had the purchase version, or this is not our file, it's just a demonstration. If you had the purchase version or had set up the manual payroll, then you would have this little arrow icon, the pay employees and the pay liabilities being 2 of the crucial buttons. You'd see that flow chart. If you do not have the paid payroll or the manual version set up, you will not see that arrow as we have here. Now, if you want to set up with a manual version, try to set it up now. You can take a look at it. There's currently a problem within the QuickBooks help menu to do it. And therefore, until they fix that, there is a workaround, but I'm not comfortable demonstrating the workaround because you actually have to go into code and whatnot. And I'm not comfortable demonstrating that. So we will not be turning it on unless they adjust this. So we're going to go to the help menu up top, and then you go to the QuickBooks desktop help. And then you should be able to type into here that you want the manual payroll to be set up. So you want the manual payroll. This is a great tool for just learning payroll. I would not use it, again, to actually process payroll in most cases, because it's going to be it's not something you want to have the support of the payroll system to help calculate the payroll taxes. Now, there should be something once this is done that says process payroll manually without a subscription to QuickBooks Desktop Payroll. That doesn't show up here. All we have are articles to other help questions that send us in a loop, and there is current questions about this to Intuit, so hopefully they'll look into it. Obviously, the manual payroll isn't their primary concern because they want, the paid payroll, and they're trying to support the paid payroll for it. So maybe it's something that they're dropping off entirely. It was there in the prior version. It's not here now. Therefore, we're going to push forward without it here. Again, we will add the payroll section at the end of this course to follow along exactly. However, you'd have to, purchase the payroll to follow along. If they fix the payroll at that time, you could follow along just basically using the manual version, setting it up as we demonstrated here. So now we're going to add a new employee. As we do so, note that most of the information with a new employee you can get from a W-4 form. So the W-4 form is what the employee would typically fill out when you have the new employee. This is an IRS document. You can find it at irs.gov, irs.gov, as you can see up top in the URL. So you can consider this is where you could, you get the name, the social security number, the area of living. We're going to need the marital status, single, married, and then we're going to need the number of allowances in order to help us to calculate the payroll taxes for it. So I'm going to minimize this. We are, in essence, just going to be entering the basic data related to the employees. Similar kind of section that we could go into the Employee Center here. I like to use the drop-down, so I go up top to the Employees drop-down, go into the Employee Center. Within the Employee Center, we have the similar kind of layout as we have seen for the Customer Center and the Vendor Center. We're then going to go into the similar type of item up here, New Employee, adding the new employee. And we have, once again, a similar type of input screen as we've seen in the Customer Center and the Vendor Center. Obviously here we need to input more information. Don't need all of it, but some of this information is going to be required for the payroll tax to be processed. So we're going to need, obviously, the name. So I'm going to say one of our employees is Adam. We're going to say Hamilton. Adam Hamilton. It's going to be print on the paychecks in this format. If we wanted to reverse the order on the paycheck, last name, first name, or something like that, we could then enter that here. I'm going to put in the social security number, which is, of course, required for the payroll. This is a made-up social security number, obviously, 565. I'm going to put 655665. And the gender, I notice I'm just tabbing through this. I would get used to tab. Use the tab key, tab through the screen. Otherwise, if you're picking and choosing with the mouse, it's much less efficient than simply tapping through the blank screens that you're not going to be using. All right, and then I'm going to type in male, or just M here. Date of birth, I'm going to say is 09/05/1979. So that's going to be 9/5/1979. Marital status. Now, the marital status, this is one of those things where you might ask, well, why do I care what their marital status is? What does it have to do with the job? Obviously, the reason we need to know their marital status in here isn't just so we can know them better. We need to know it because that's going to help us to determine the amount of taxes that need to be withheld. So we have to actually know the marital status and put the marital status in here. We're going to say single for Adam. The citizen, we're going to say they're a citizen. And ethnicity is going to be an optional field, so I'm going to leave the ethnicity blank. We don't need that to process the payroll. And then disability, this could be relevant. We're not going to put anything in the disability description. This is going to be the I-9 form, and we're just going to put yes here for the I-9. All right, and then we're going to go down to the rest of these fields. We're going to go to the address and contact. This is a required field for the employees, unlike for a customer or vendor, because we do need the address on there so that we can, tell the IRS where they are when we issue the W-2 to the IRS. We got to tell them, hey, we paid these people, tax these people, and if you don't, here's where they live. So we got to give the address to them. So it's going to be the 1423, and I'm going to just make it up an address here. This is obviously a mock address. I think there's a pizza shop here, so I don't know. I looked it up here. So New York, this is going to be New York. And we will have here, the zip code is going to be 10003. Now, that's going to be the information we need to have. Now, we probably should have the email address, the phone number, and so on, but not all of these fields will be required simply to process the payroll. So notice we don't need every field, of course, filled out. The required fields don't have anything like an asterisk here, which would kind of be nice to process, to just simply process the payroll. But we're going to leave these out. Within the additional information tab now, we're not going to have anything here. And then the payroll information. Now, if we were to process the payroll from the QuickBooks system, this would be something that, of course, we would need to have in the system to process it through. So let's just go through these payroll items. We have the payroll schedule, the payroll frequency. Now, the frequency, if we take a look at it, the normal type of frequency, when do we pay people? We got daily, weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, monthly, quarterly, and annually. So we need to pick one of these would be the typical types of ways we would pay people. Now, everything looks pretty straightforward. Semi-monthly and bi-weekly can be a bit confusing. Just be aware of that. If you pay people basically semi-monthly, we can think of that as 12 months times 2, because we pay them twice a month. That would be 24. However, if on the other hand we pay them bi-weekly every other week, and so that means we might have 2 or 3 pay periods in a particular month. Well, there's 52 weeks in a year, so if we divide that by 2, we have 26. So just note those aren't quite the same. There's 26 versus 24 pay periods. In our case, we're going to say that we're going to pay this individual monthly. So we're going to say monthly. And then down here, this is where we set up the items for the payroll items. And this would be like, are they a salaried employee or an hourly employee? So we're going to say that this individual is a salaried employee. Obviously, salary isn't set up. We haven't set up any items yet. So if I hit tab or enter, it'll say, hey, we need to set that up. And like, do we want to set that up? And I'm going to go, yeah, set up the salary. And then it'll go through the setup process. So we're just going to pick the annual salary because that's what we typically think of with salary. We're going to pick the annual salary and then go next. It will be for the regular pay. So we're going to say regular pay. And then enter the name for the salary item. We're just going to simply keep it as salary as the name for the item. Enter the account for tracking the expenses. So when we process the payroll, what's going to be the expense account? Payroll expenses. That sounds reasonable. We'll keep it there. And then we will finish this. And then the annual pay that we're going to have, we're going to say that the annual pay, we've decided to pay $55,000 a year. So $55,000 a year, and we pay them monthly, 12 months in a year. Take that divided by 12. That's going to be the 4538. So we're going to put the yearly salary here, which is the $55,000. And when we calculate the payroll, then it's going to break that out into the monthly pay that will be broken out, that divided by 12. Next, we're going to go into the taxes up top. So we're going to set up the taxes. So we'll select taxes. And then we have the federal, state, and other. So we're mainly concerned with the federal now, and the state, the states will change depending on the state we are in. We're going to say the filing status is single. We're going to say that the allowances are 1. These 2 items would be found on the W-4 that they would fill out. And they're going to be subject to Medicare, Social Security. These are federal taxes. Everybody in the U.S. is subject to those taxes, and the federal unemployment tax. So these are all, typically everybody will be subject to those taxes. Now, we're not going to enter the state information because the state information will change from state to state. And I don't want to concentrate on a particular state. I want to just process the federal taxes, and then the state taxes will basically depend on which state that we are in. So I went back there. It says the state taxes is not selected. And then we're going to say OK. And we'll record that. So that's the Adam Hamilton. That's our first employee. Now we'll add another employee to demonstrate an hourly salary or an hourly rate. And that's going to be, we're going to say Erica is our second employee, last name Robertson. And there's a format that it's going to show up here. Social Security number 545545544. That would be found on the W-4. Gender female. Date of birth, we're going to say is 12/31/1979. Marital status, we're going to say is married. Notice I'm just tabbing through here. Married and citizen, yes. I don't need an ethnicity for typically. Disable, we're going to keep these fields as they are. Then we'll go to the address and contact, and then we're just making up an address again. We got 4th East 2nd, all numbers here, Street, New York. And we're going to say new, and then I'm going to put New York, and the zip is going to be 10003. And so there is the address. We don't have any additional information, the payroll information then. So here, once again, we're going to be paying them monthly. So that's going to be the payroll frequency. We're going to set up the payroll item of hourly, hourly. And I just type it in there. It's not in the drop down, just so you can see the drop down. We only have one, which is salary now, right? We could add new here. I like to just type it in there and say hourly. Let's start with a capital. And then say tab. And then it's going to ask us to set it up. And we're going to set that up once again. Do you want to set a payroll item to track hourly wages? Yeah, we're going to make it hourly wages and say next. It's going to be regular pay as opposed to overtime and sick. So we're going to say next. It will be called the hourly. That looks good. Next. It will be expensed to payroll expenses once again as we process payroll. That looks good. And so we will finish that. Then we're going to set up the payroll taxes. Notice I don't have the rate yet. I'm going to say I don't know the rate yet. So I'm going to keep that. Obviously, this would be an hourly rate, how much we pay per hour as opposed to last time when we put in the full year's salary. So this would be an hourly rate. I'm going to go to the taxes up top, and we have the federal taxes. We're going to say that this information would be taken, remember, from the W-4. She is married according to the W-4. 3 allowances we have here, and no extra withholding, subject to Medicare, Social Security, and federal unemployment. Once again, we're not going to be putting anything into the state. That would differ, of course, from state to state. So we're going to say OK. And then we're going to say continue, and then OK. It's asking if we want to set up for other local taxes and sick and vacation. I'm going to say leave it as is for now. So there's going to be our 2 employees. So now when we process our paychecks, obviously we would process it with these 2. If we go back to the home page, and we don't see the processing payroll because we don't have the payroll on. However, even if we don't process the payroll within QuickBooks and it's done by a third party, we'd want to set up the employees. It would be set up in a similar fashion, and then we can enter that data in some way, shape, or form. So it's in our financial statements. We would have to enter like a journal entry of some kind so that the expenses would go up on the income statement, and we record the transaction in the cash going out, the expenses going up. We'll discuss that more in future presentations. So now, however, we do have those employees set up. We can also print out an employee list, and you can go to the reports drop down up top. You can then go down to the employees and payroll, and then we have different type of payroll reports. Of course, if you want to just consider the employee list itself, we have the employee contact list. This will just give us a list of the employees. And so there is our report for the employee contact list. Also note, as I close this out and we go into the employee center, then of course we have our 2 employees listed here in a similar fashion as we have seen in the customers and vendors.